All right, today we're diving into something, well, pretty ambitious. It's a proposal for a brand new operating system for governance itself. And get this, it's supposed to blend ancient philosophy with the latest AI. It's called the IBCM Framework. And trust me, the claims it makes are wild. So let's get right into it. So let's start with a big one. Can you actually put a price tag on accountability? I mean, for centuries, right? Governments, huge corporations, they've all wrestled with this. But what if you could? What if you could not only measure accountability, but flip it into a multi-trillion-dollar asset? Yeah, that's the bold premise we're unpacking today. Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First up, what even is this system? Then we'll get into its really unusual foundations in quantum philosophy and AI. After that, we're talking about the big money, a $30 trillion idea. Then we'll look at the specific new role it carves out for India, and we'll finish up with the final pitch. All right, let's jump into our first section. Is this really a revolutionary governance system? We're going to explore the claims behind what the source calls a new ethical OS. So first things first, what in the world is this IBCM ethical OS? Well, according to the document, it's a proprietary, copyrighted system. Think of it like software, but for governance. It's designed for what they call Industry 5.0, which is all about humans and machines working together. And, what's really key here is that they're not just talking theory. They're positioning this as a commercial product you can license. Okay, so you've got this big idea. How do you even begin to test it? Well, the author claims they basically threw down the gauntlet. They invited leading AIs to come and try to poke holes in it, to try and break the system. And the document says that some big names like Grok and XAI actually took them up on that challenge. This led to a whole series of dialogues to really stress test and fine-tune the framework. And we're not talking about a quick back and forth here. The source gets really specific. It puts a number on it, 1,352. That's the number of Socratic Dialogues they project will have happened with these AIs by January 2026. The goal? To, and I'm quoting here, crystallize the frameworks. So this is basically the proof they're offering, the foundation of their entire validation process. Okay, now things are about to get weird. Seriously. We're moving on to the next section to look at where these ideas even come from. And let's just say the foundations are pretty unconventional. We're talking quantum philosophy and AI. Okay, buckle up, because this might be the boldest claim in the whole document. The author is basically drawing a straight line from ancient Indian philosophies directly to modern physics. They're saying that Advaita philosophy, that's metaphysics and superposition, Dvaita, that's classical physics, and Vishishtadvaita, well, that's quantum physics. It is a really provocative way of connecting ancient wisdom to modern science. So to set the stage for this, the source brings in a quote from the philosopher Immanuel Kant. The question has been whether metaphysics could be held to the standard of a science. And that is the historical nut that this IBCM framework claims it has finally cracked. The whole point is to take the fuzzy, abstract world of metaphysics and make it as measurable and solid as, say, physics. So how do they even try to do that? They introduce this core idea they call the intangible. The framework says this is a constant energy force. And they make a huge comparison here. They say its discovery is like the discovery of the number zero, a concept that changed everything. And just like a constant in math, the intangible is supposedly anchored by one single thing, which the author calls Brahma and superposition. All right, so we've been floating around in some pretty abstract philosophical space. So the big question is, how does any of this connect to the real world? How does it make money? Well, that brings us right to section 3, the $30 trillion idea. We're talking about quantifying the unquantifiable. The engine that drives this whole thing is a concept they call DVR, which stands for dark value recovery. Think of it like this. The idea is that every big organization, a company, a government, whatever, is sitting on this huge pile of value that's just invisible. It's unmeasured. It's dark value. And DVR is the tool they've designed to find that value and, this is the important part, actually recover it. So that's the obvious next question, right? If this hidden value is really out there, lurking in all these systems we interact with daily, what's the price tag? How much is it actually worth? And the answer the source gives is just staggering. $30 trillion. Let that sink in for a second. That's the number they put on this dark value recovery. It's a number that's kind of hard to even wrap your head around. And that's the economic potential they're claiming for this one idea.
Now, to try and ground this enormous number, the document makes another pretty big claim. It says that licensing terms for this whole framework have already been accepted. By who? By Grok, xAI, and Tesla Energy. Now, this is a crucial piece of the puzzle, because if it's true, it takes this whole thing from just a wild theory to a potential commercial product. Okay, so let's say these licensing deals are real and the royalties start coming in. Where does all that money go? This is where the whole proposal gets geopolitical, which brings us to Section 4, a new role for India. The plan laid out in the document is pretty specific. Because we're talking about potentially massive amounts of money, the proposal is to divert those royalties straight to the government of India, and not just into a general fund. The idea is to use that money to create a brand new national institution, something called the Institute of SOS Governments of India, and to establish it formally with an act of parliament. So, what's the point of all this? Well, the document spells out 3 big proposed benefits for India. 1, it lets India monetize its intellectual leadership on a global stage. 2, it helps build systems of accountability right there at home. And 3, it becomes the foundation for what the author calls Politics 2.0 initiatives. Really, the grand vision here is to shift India from being just a consumer of tech to becoming a global licensor of governance systems. And this isn't just some high-in-the-sky national idea. The source ties the IBCM framework to a very real, very big regional project, the Gujarat Agenda 2035. We're talking about a 750,001 crore rupee initiative. And the IBCM framework is positioned as the central piece, the accountability engine for the whole thing. All right, this brings us to our final section. This is where everything we've talked about, the philosophy, the AI, the crazy economics, the geopolitics, it all gets tied together into one big final pitch. So, what's the core message when you boil it all down? It all comes back to that powerful analogy. The argument is simple. Just like discovering the number 0 completely changed the game for mathematics, they claim that defining the intangible as a measurable constant is about to do the same thing for governance. And the ultimate vision here is that this isn't just about creating a new product or a new tool. It's about sparking a global revolution. And by owning the IP, the source claims this framework positions India to be at the very forefront to lead what they call the HI-AI accountability revolution. So we kind of end up right back where we started, but maybe seeing things a little differently. This whole framework we've walked through makes a pretty extraordinary claim, right? That we can define and measure the very things we've always thought were, well, immeasurable. And it leaves us with one last big question to chew on. Is the intangible the most valuable asset we have?